Hi, friends. Hope you're doing well. This is going to be a prophecy focus. We're going to be looking at the rebuilding of the Jewish temple. Again, as I always try to emphasize, Christ told us to be looking, to be aware, understand the times in which we live, be looking for His coming, to be that alert Christian who then, at the same time, it makes you aware, it makes you also ready to share the good news of the gospel with the lost, and realize, that this isn't all there is, and grabbing hold of everything you can in this world, isn't going to be what we should be about as Christians. We should be looking to share the good news, and to show Christ in in His love, His kindness to other people. Well, one of those things that we should be looking for, is the rebuilding of the temple. We know that the Jewish people were dispersed in 70 AD. The temple was destroyed. They were fully dispersed in around AD 30, 32 time frame, when Hadrian went in there and basically destroyed the Jerusalem as a whole, and then dispersed the Jewish people. Millions were killed, so far, at least 1 million was killed. We know the temple itself was destroyed in 70 AD under the General Titus, and the 10th Legion. I think it was the 10th and the 5th Legion. There's one other, I believe. But in any case, it was destroyed. And you get into it and you're like, okay, well, one of those things that the Bible starts talking about is, the Jews are going to be dispersed and they're going to be brought back. And then if they're brought back, they would be reestablished as a nation. There'd be only one leader over them at that sense. It talks about this in Ezekiel 36, 37, and then it gets into 38, 39. Obviously, the Gog and Magog wars. But again, it foretells that in those chapter 38 and 39, that it'd be in the end times. So we know that the Jews would be brought back in the end times, and then there would be this war that's going to be assaulted against them. And we'll do a prophecy focus on that at some point, where we see those national alignments that it talks about in Ezekiel 38, 39 is actually forming. Well, one of those other things that we should be looking for, again, we're not focused on one thing, but the convergence of signs. That's one of those key things that we should be looking for as Christians. That as Christians is the convergence of signs. And one of those, obviously, is the rebuilding of the temple. And why is that important for us as Christians? It's not that we're pushing for it, it's just the reality of what we're observing and what's happening. Well, in a couple of places, key places in Scripture, prophetically speaking, in the end times parts of prophecy in the Bible, it alludes to and specifically states that there's going to be a temple in which the Antichrist will ultimately be in connection with in some way, either going into it and declaring himself to be God and being worshipped as God, or another one associated with it as well. We're going to look at those two key ones anyway. Would be first one's going to be 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, and we're going to look at chapter 2, verses 3 and 4. So 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 3 and 4. It's well known by most people, so it's nothing new, but we're going to observe these, just kind of look at it. And it just says, let no one in any way deceive you, for it will not come, obviously the gathering us to be with the Lord, unless the apostasy comes first. And I think we're seeing the apostasy come first. You don't need to, you just basically drive down the road and you see a church with a rainbow flag flying there and saying, we welcome anybody, or we're open to you. Basically you can see, obviously there's an apostasy that's taking place. You don't have to look any further than that. And as an assault on the LGBTQ movement, it's just a reality. As Christians, we don't judge the people outside the church. We expect the world to be in a situation where they are. We're judging those in the church, and the church itself has drifted away from the things of God. And one of those is stating that there'd be an apostasy. Well, we see that, and that'll be for another time. We'll study that and go through it on a prophecy focus. But it goes on to say, it says, for it will not come unless the apostasy comes first, and then the man of lawlessness is to be revealed, the son of destruction. Obviously, the Antichrist is who it's talking about. Well, that means the fact that we're seeing this apostasy take place, we see the Jewish people back, we see the alignment of nations for the north, we should be expecting to see the Antichrist on the scene appearing soon. And, it's weird how people even in churches, they're so established, it's just really strange. They think you're crazy if you say, that we should be looking for the Antichrist and it could possibly be this person or this person. You can't do that, and it's like, well, no, that's what we're actually supposed to be doing. We're commanded to be looking, to be ready, to be alert. What does that mean? We need to be warning people, hey, this person could be the Antichrist if everything else we're seeing is in connection. If Israel wasn't back in his land, we wouldn't be saying that. If Israel didn't have control of its Temple Mount, we wouldn't be saying that. If the alignment of nations around it, Russia, Turkey, Iran, wasn't where they are in northern Syria, on the mountains of Israel, antagonistically in conflict with Israel, we wouldn't be saying that. If there wasn't a spoil, i.e. oil and natural gas, that is now going to be going through recent agreement going into Europe, which is going to severely hurt both Turkey and Russia, primarily Russia, we wouldn't be saying that. There's so many things that are pointing to the end times that it really is amazing. But within the church, you can't do that. You can't say that we're looking for that. We're looking for the Lord's return. It's like, yeah, we are looking for the Lord's return, but the Lord commanded us to be looking to be ready. And here's the things He gives us to be looking for. And yet, you're so afraid that you're going to somehow be looked at in some weird way that you're not willing to look at it and to warn those around you, i.e. Christians and the lost, to be looking ready, that you're willing to allow them to go into the tribulation, which is going to be the worst time in the history of mankind, and the majority of people won't survive it, and yet you're so afraid of someone being looked at in a weird way that you're not willing to warn them. My goodness, you need to reevaluate yourself. You take too much, look at too much of yourself and not enough about what God commanded, in my opinion. But he goes on to say that, so we should be looking for that. We should be looking for a guy who's on the scene, who's involved in a number of things. We'll focus on that, and I have done one on the Antichrist, but I'm going to do another focus on that, which I think I try to keep these short and concise. So I'm trying to keep them under 10 minutes, and that's going to be the goal anyway. So he goes on, he says, verse 4, he says, who opposes and exalts himself above every so-called God or object of worship, so that he takes his seat in the temple of God, displaying himself to be God. So obviously there has to be a temple. The temple we know was destroyed in 70 AD, and we know that that it's going to be rebuilt because obviously the Antichrist is going to come into it and declare himself to be God. And that's going to happen in the last days, as the end of this age. And some people say, well, yeah, but that was written before the destruction of the temple and blah, blah, blah. I agree with that. 2 Thessalonians was written before that, but you get into Revelation, almost everybody agrees that Revelation was written after the destruction of the temple. Well, it kind of goes into that in verse 11. It says, then those who are, there was given to me a measuring rod like that of a staff, and someone said to me, get up and measure the temple of God and the altar and those who worship in it. Leave out the outer courts outside of the temple and do not measure it, for it has been given over to the nations, and they will trample it underfoot, the holy city, for 42 months, so for 3.5 years. So that's verse 1 and 2 of chapter 11 of Revelation. So obviously that was written after the destruction of the temple, indicating that there's going to be a rebuilt temple, but it's going to be a divided city, and it's going to, which seems to indicate a division of the city and potentially Israel. Obviously, if you look at the prophet Joel in chapter 3, verses 1 and 2, it clearly indicates that in the end times prophecy, there's going to be a division of the land, a dividing of the land. So this whole two-state solution, and ultimately a division of the Temple Mount itself and a division of the city, is what's prophesied, if you're paying attention. So Joel chapter 3, verses 1 and 2, and Revelation chapter 11, verses 1 and 2, both agree to that there's going to be a division of the land. And we're seeing that as part of the whole so-called peace agreement. So when we see the restoration of Judea, we've seen the restoration of Jerusalem. When you see the restoration of Judea, know that that's when the time in which the end times is coming, and that God will call the nations down to judgment according to chapter Joel, which we'll do a prophecy focus on that as well. But on this one, it clearly indicates there's going to be a rebuilt temple. I want to play this real quick, and just so you know, what time is it if we see it truly starting to happen? So let's look at this and listen.
It almost looked like a scene from the Bible. A group of people performing a special procession for the Jewish holiday of Shavuot, using sheep, a special bread, and a sacrificial altar, similar to the one described in the Torah.
We're practicing the different parts of the priestly work, of the Kohanim in the temple. And today we're going to see a few things. We're going to see the Bikurim, all the pilgrimage that come with the first fruit to Jerusalem, how they would bring it, how we would praise God in the temple. And from that point of view, it's also something that the priests have to know how to get the people, and also the people themselves what they have to say and how they proceed as they get into the temple.
This event gathered different organizations which share the same goal, rebuilding a third Jewish temple on the Temple Mount.
Interesting. So you have a number of Jewish groups practicing, training a Kohanim priesthood to actually do the sacrificial system and presentation of things on the various feasts in a rebuilt temple. It's a real thing that's really happening, not including the reestablishment of artifacts, the priestly garments, the gold artifacts, all the things that are necessary for them to conduct a priestly service in a rebuilt temple. The reality is it's there. People are really preparing. People are really training for it. It should be a wake-up call to the church, but again, what we see is that there would be an apostasy and that people aren't looking at that. And what do we see primarily in the church? We see people who basically are denying a rapture, denying the imminency of Jesus Christ coming for the church. Most of them are embracing post-tribulationism, or if not, no tribulationism, no rapture event at all in some cases. But many are gravitating to that, which is very strange when you actually read through the Bible and read it in a sense that I think best harmonizes the end times teachings that the church will be raptured pre-tribulation. But anyway, that's for another one. But I did find it interesting that with the other things happening, something that's very interesting is that the temple is the real deal is that Jews are really preparing to rebuild the temple, and they're training the priesthood, they're raising the funds, they've got the animals, they've done everything that you could pretty much do except for the political will to build. And we know that things are going to happen, could be the Gog-Magog war even, that will ultimately lead to, again, this peace agreement that will ultimately divide Jerusalem, divide the land, but reestablish worship in a rebuilt temple on the Temple Mount. Very fascinating times we live in, and as Christians, we should be aware that means the Lord's coming back for us soon. And we should be looking for that, revealing the apostasy, which I believe is rapidly occurring right now before our eyes in the church, as Christians are, so-called Christians are leaving the church and embracing all kinds of different stuff, and will ultimately worship the Antichrist and be deceived in that regard. And then we should be looking for the Antichrist coming. If you're looking for it, you won't be deceived to worship it. You should be looking for that. And there's some key points that you should be looking for. And I'll do a prophecy update on that again and our focus. And we'll just to make sure that, hey, we can see what's going on. And so Christians aren't deceived in any way. Not that I think they can be. In a sense, true Christians will be looking and realize that this is a satanic deception and empowered being that is here to deceive the world and to ultimately destroy the world, and for the purposes of his own desires and megalomaniac type of personality traits, and ruling the world, as it were, and ultimately destroying the world and the people in it, especially God's people. Amazing times we live in as Christians, so we don't make this stuff up. It's happening all around us if you're paying attention. So when I see certain Christians and they just seem to be like they're asleep, and they think you're crazy when you talk about these things, but the reality is it's there. You should be looking, you should be ready. We're commanded to be looking and ready. And it's weird that Christians just aren't. It's like they're, asleep at the wheel when they should be wide awake, yelling from the rooftops, "Hey, the Lord's coming soon. Are you awake? Be ready." The end times are here. What's ahead of us is a terrible time. You don't want to go into it, and you don't have to. And unfortunately, people reject that. So, and because they're willing to believe the lies of Satan. So anyway, God bless you. Keep looking up. Time is short. Be active in sharing your faith. Be in the Word, and love the Lord with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. We'll see you.